legislative meeting, which I will call the special legislative meeting to order at 7:05 p.m. And of course, as always, the first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. So first of all, are there any amendments required to the agenda? Hearing none and seeing no indications that anyone, although I don't have that part of my window open, hold on a second. There we go. No hands up, no changes. Members of the council, are there any conflicts of interest that you have for the agenda item? Okay. May I please have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Ooh, motion by Councilmember Foe. I think the second was Councilmember Smith.
We can defer to seniority if you'd like.
Okay, let's go with Councilmember Lingua for the second then. This is an important motion to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion of the agenda?
Gosh, I didn't know, wasn't sure if my mic was on. I guess it was. Okay. I have no other comments on it. Actually, I do. Well, it'll come during after the motion is made.
Okay. Any public comments on the motion to approve the agenda? Hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Is Councilmember Sadiq? Yes, Councilmember Sadiq.
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia.
Aye.
And is Councilmember Mayers here this evening?
I don't believe so, sir.
Okay, so I will abstain. The motion passes 5-0-1. Let's move on to public comments. Are there any public comments this evening? Hearing none, move on to the legislative action item. And before we get started too far, I'll note that this is an introduction of an ordinance. It does not require a second, and it does not have any discussion. It's just an introduction to get the process going on the budget. So would anyone like to introduce Ordinance 2022-OR-03, which is the fiscal year 2023 budget and tax rates?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I'd like to make a motion to introduce Ordinance 2022-OR-3. This is an ordinance concerning the fiscal year 2023 budget and tax rates. And this is for the purpose of adopting our operating and our capital budgets for the town. For the fiscal year beginning this coming July 1 and ending on June 30 of next year, 2023. It's also for setting the rates of real and personal property, as well as operating property taxation, and for the fiscal year and the levying of such taxes, and those matters generally relating to the adoption of the town's budget and levying taxes and setting tax rates for the town for this coming fiscal year, again, beginning on July 1 this year and ending on June 30 of next year.
Thank you, Councilmember Lingua, for that fine and detailed introduction of this ordinance.
You're welcome.
Yes?
No, go ahead. No, that's fine.
Do you wish to make any additional comments or?
No, not at this time. As this is, as this is an introduction, I think it's just fine to leave it where it is.
Okay, very good. Okay, let's move on the agenda then. Next item is new business. Are there any items of new business? Hearing none, seeing no hands. Are there any items of unfinished business?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
on third thought, being that this is somewhat unfinished business and it's related to what we're doing with this agenda, I would like to offer a apology to the council and those folks in attendance on this past Saturday as we were going over the budget, because there was one page that I realized later that I missed, that I wanted to hear from staff a somewhat an expanded presentation on the items on that page, having to do with the portion of the budget outlining expenditures for human resources. That page specifically being, that would be, for me, it was a book page 89. And I had talked with Ms. Barnes earlier today and asked her if she could please convey to Mr. Smith if he would be able to present that page to us this evening. One could say it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other of when we're doing this. Be it now or during the work session, I just thought now is probably as good a time as any, being that we are, this special legislative is dealing with an introduction of the budget. And for me personally, and I find this as being, a small bit of unfinished business from the hearing. So I thought it'd be best to be handled here.
Is staff prepared to discuss this at this time?
I can attempt to, yes.
Okay, please do.
Okay, thank you. This page covers is part of the employee services group or department. And this page starts out with employee wellness program. So what we have for employee wellness is we have established a committee that we've established a 4-member committee that's reviewing our wellness program, and we're evaluating the current programs, services, and policies, and we are assessing the employees' needs and what employees want. We're developing a health promotion plan, and we'll be implementing and monitoring wellness activities. And we're partnering with a health insurance company to determine what components they can help us with, and at no additional cost, because anything they do for us is already covered under our health insurance. So that's part of the employee wellness program. In the past, we have COVID-19 has somewhat slowed us down from moving forward all of the things we would like to do there. And we've also sent employees to their home wellness packages, and we have a 24-hour healthy snack wall in all departments. And Sergeant Green has worked very hard to increase the enrollment in the Goals Gym. So that's under the employee wellness program. Under the awards and gifts, that's employee recognition. We celebrate milestones, anniversaries, birthdays, different achievements that employees have. We're in the process of formalizing a recognition program, and with the help of Anna Winland, when she comes on board, we'll be able to put that in concrete. So that's part of the awards and employee recognition. And we have the Goals Gym membership, which we said that I think it's been growing over the years, and I think we're up to about 21, if I'm correct, people that have registered for the Goals Gym, and we anticipate 3 or 4 more for next year. Then we have the new hire expenses, which are the pre-employment drug screening and background checks. And then we have benevolence and goodwills, flowers, fruit baskets, and other goodwill items are covered there. And if it's any other questions, I'll be willing to address them.
Thank you, Director Smith. Councilmember Lingua, does that address your concern and this item?
Yes.
Unfinished business?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, it does. I just thought it was important that this page be broken down, as you know, this is part of, at least I feel, it's part, the page of what we are planning as outlays for employee services, that it means a lot. It means a lot to the employees. It means a lot to, and in turn, that means a lot to the town. We rely a great deal on the efforts of staff to come in and work day to day, helping us as a policy board on behalf of the residents govern the town. And I feel that the health and well-being of staff is of utmost importance to really all of us in town, and to being able to meet the objectives that are set forward, allow projects to come to fruition, allow what we're doing in terms of our CIP, what we're doing in terms of provide public works and public safety and general administrative services to the town. Services like these and what our commitment is to them is important to all of us. And I wanted to make sure that that was covered, so that not only us as council have more of an understanding, but members of the community can as well. Thank you very much for that time. Mr. Smith, thank you very much for the presentation too.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other items of unfinished business? Hearing none, may I please have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Motion by Councilmember Lingua, seconded by Councilmember Foe to adjourn the special legislative meeting. This is neither discussed nor debated. I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Sadiq.
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia.
Aye.
And Councilmember Mayers is still absent, it appears. I abstain. The motion passes 5-0-1. We are adjourned. Let's go ahead and jump directly into the work session. Call that to order at 7:18 p.m. This is an informal meeting. We don't have as many formal votes, as many careful discussions. Well, we have careful discussions, but they're not as formal. And so before moving forward, are any changes needed to the agenda, or are there any stated conflicts of interest for agenda items? Okay, hearing none, then let's move on to the presentation on the fiscal year 2023 budget. Deputy Director Jones.
Evening, Mayor and Council, members of the public. So we did have some edits to the proposed budget. There were some minor changes that we've implemented. We had formatting changes. We had some changes to the fonts. There were some misspelled words that we had corrected and some titles. Additionally, we had a chart to increase transparency to better illustrate the expenditures as a percentage of the budget, and this can be found in the budget message on page 8. Per the mayor and council, we also increased project CIP 23 PW05, which is traffic signs, from 88,000 to 112,000, an increase of 24,000. This can be found on page 211. And in doing so, we also had to update the CIP revenue, CIP expenditures, as well as the fund balance sheet. CIP revenue is page 187, CIP expenditure is page 188, and the fund balance sheet can be found on page 8. So yeah, those were the major changes that we made to the proposed budget, as well as some cosmetic changes with formatting, fonts, misspelled words, and things of that nature. And yeah, so if there's any other questions regarding that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Deputy Director Jones. Are there questions for Deputy Director Jones about his presentation?
I have none.
Thank you, Council Member. Are there public comments or questions on this presentation? Okay, hearing none, let's move along in the agenda to the mayor's report. I wanted to have provide a very short report and just again thank staff, as they did at the Finance Committee hearing on Saturday, for the fantastic and very detailed work on the budget. It's not only a balanced budget, not only a carefully considered budget, it is also this year, I think, even more so than previously, a beautiful budget, beautifully laid out and formatted and easy to trace through where money is being spent, where revenues are coming from. So thank you again to the staff. And just because it is my tradition and we are still in the midst of a pandemic, and I'll mention that COVID-19 is still there. The rate of infections in Prince George's County, the data is not updated over weekends anymore. They have ceased doing that. But with the data coming in at the end of last week, then we are at approximately 16 or 17 infections per day per 100,000 population. And that is up by about a factor of 2 in the last 2 weeks. And so I'm concerned that that this will continue, and would implore everyone listening to please be careful, please continue to maintain vigilance, and please stay safe. And that concludes my report for this meeting. Unless there are any questions, I will move to the town manager's report. Mr. Town Manager.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council and the community. I'll keep it very brief tonight. We on the staff team appreciate all the kind words from the council as it relates to the work done on the budget. I do believe each year we improve, and I think this year is the same. Just to echo the mayor's comments on COVID, I've been watching the numbers, the rolling 7-day average per 100,000, and they just continue to creep up. And Montgomery County, as of the end of last week, was over 21 cases. So our neighbor is seeing a larger increase, and we've been trailing behind them just by a few numbers. But as I reminded the staff team in our all staff meeting today, the pandemic is still here, and we have to be very careful and continue to follow the protocols that we have in place. And the last thing I have is a reminder for the community that we have a public hearing next week on the tax rate. The proposal is to keep the tax rate flat at 0.6540. And more information about that can be found online. And there's under current news and events, there's a tab for the budget. And just encourage residents to review the budget book as well. And if they have questions or concerns, there's additional opportunities for them to make their concerns known to the council. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Any questions for the Town Manager? Seeing no indication, excuse me, move on to Council, Committee, and Ward reports. And we'll start with Councilmember Smith, Ward 1.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, in relation to our conversation before our meeting was called to order today, I want to submit for the record in the chat here a Daily Beast article dated December 18th, 2017 called "The Case for Pittsburgh Pizza." I'm sure my colleague from Ward 2 will be excited to see that. And with that bit of silliness out of the way, for those who don't know, next week, Teacher Appreciation Week. Nationally, it's going to be awesome. The National Teacher of the Year was just announced this past week. Be honored at the White House, our neighbors up the street. Really excited about that. So I want to thank all of the educators in Riverdale Park. As we know, our educators are chronically underappreciated, both in terms of sentiment and actual pay. There is according to the Economic Policy Institute, 20% teacher penalty. That basically means that educators make 20% less than professionals of similar experience and education level. And I think that is abhorrent. And I really hope folks around our community will take some time and thank any educators that you know in your life. Councilmember Foe. Our educators are dealing with a lot right now between the ongoing pandemic and politicians who would rather divide our communities than prepare our children to be active and engaged citizens in our democracy, which we know to be the actual purpose of public education, which is itself under attack in addition to the educators that serve in public education. So thank you to all of our public educators in Riverdale Park. I appreciate you and thank you. And that's all I've got for my report today.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Lingua, Ward 2.
What?
Excuse me, Councilmember Foe. I was reading and I flipped my eyes in the wrong place. Councilmember Foe.
Wow.
Unbelievable,
Wait a minute.
Councilman Lingua. Can you believe that?
Talk about
Oh,
disrespecting
my.
educators.
I mean, seriously, Councilman Smith. I don't
Oh
even
my
know. You'll never live.
gosh.
Mayor Thompson.
Man, when I hear this, there's only one thing I can think of.
That's pretty good sound effect.
You're welcome.
I just Councilmember Smith, the incredibly kind words you said about educators landed in a soft place in my heart. Thank you so much. I have an older brother. My dad was a teacher. My older brother's a teacher. My sister's a teacher. I myself am a teacher. And it's been an incredibly difficult year. So I want to say thank you so much for your kind words. And with that, I will yield the rest of my time back to the mayor and the council member from Ward 3, David Lingua.
Oh. Heavens.
Thank you, Councilmember Foe. And thank you to everyone on the council for allowing me to occasionally have a little slip up. So, Council Member Lingua from Ward 3, would you have a report this evening?
Well, that's okay, Mr. Mayor. And as the saying goes, or as the old punchline to the joke goes, hey, even Sinatra had to clear his throat. So no worries. I mean, you've been, for all these years, you've been pretty on top of it. So, you know, we'll give you a pass this time. Okay. I'm just going to keep this brief. I'd like to thank everyone for making time on both the 9th and on the 23rd to be able to participate in the budget hearings. I think we did this in a fairly expedient yet thorough manner. If anyone thinks otherwise, please, I'm open to suggestions. I'd like to thank staff for, as mentioned before, preparing the budget as you did. 3 thumbs up, 5 stars out of 5, however you want to say. It's very well done. Having seen a number of these books over the years, I gotta say they just keep, they just keep getting honed to being something a little better each time, and it is greatly appreciated by me, and I hope it's also appreciated by other members of the council as well. I'm going to hold the balance of my report for next week. I'll have updates for what's happening with the CCAR CDC, as well as some other items. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lingua. Councilmember Sadiq, Ward 4.
Yes, I'm hearing ongoing concerns about students leaving Parkdale High School and coming through homeowners' yards, and as well as the police reactions that happen and the excitement that then happens. I don't know if we have any way to ask either the public school system or the park service, whichever might be appropriate, if there's a way to extend the fence near the school, or if there's a way to put a fence near our community.
Does that conclude your report, Councilmember Sadiq? Councilmember Sadiq, does that conclude your report? I didn't hear.
Yes, I can lose my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Mejia, Ward 5.
Good afternoon. Good evening. I have no report.
Thank you very much. And Councilmember Mayers is apparently still not here, so she will not be providing a report. Mr. Town Manager, I did have one question. This is not about any items that were in your report, but the financial disclosure forms are due at the end of this month. Is that correct?
I believe so, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Barnes?
Yes, they are. They're due at the end of the month.
Okay, just wanted to remind all the council members of that. I was digging through my calendar and saw the glaring neon sign of the financial disclosure form lurking out there. So I wanted to remind everyone else that you should try to get those in as soon as possible, but certainly by the end of the month. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on to public comments. Are there any public comments this evening?
Yes, hi. My name is Michelle Fobbs, and my husband Joseph Fobbs, and we live in the Madison Hill development. And Mr. Sadiq is our is a member on the board, and he is in our community. And he just mentioned about the fence in our development, and I just want to reinstate that it is really, well, I feel imperative. We have students who hang and lauder in the back area. There's a whole lot going on. There was a gun found in the back area. Today, when my husband looked out, they had started a small fire, and we're constantly getting in contact with the Riverdale police. We constantly get in contact with the principal at Parkdale, and they come through our yards, our neighbors, Mr. Drew and the other neighbor, Mr. Solomon's yard. And we really, really want to have something done before something major occurs. We want to stop the trafficking through our yards during school days. We want to stop the fact that they're down in the area loitering many hours of the day during school time. And even today is another eye opener with a brush fire, 2 brush fires. And then also, like I mentioned, there was a gun. If we found out that it was a BB gun, however, there was a gun hidden in the bush in our backyard. What we're trying to do is get a fence, first of all, to cover the area so they will not come through our yards. And then to me, it's imperative, maybe Parkdale, because like I said, I did partner with the principal there, that they won't be able to go through the woods to come down. So it's important to us. And I know there may be some other neighbors on the line now that may concur with my husband. Again, my name is Michelle Fobbs and my husband, Joseph Fobbs. So we're asking and pleading for help with a fence so we can stop the traffic.
Thank you, Ms. Fobbs, for your comment. I appreciate the information. Councilmember Sadiq has been mentioning this issue to us, but it always helps us to understand better when we hear from other residents as well as the council representatives. Are there additional public comments this evening? Okay, I will discuss this item again with the town manager when I meet with him later this week and see what programs we might establish to address this issue. So thank you again for your comments.
Thank you.
Of course. So let's move along to work session discussion items if there are no additional public comments. First discussion item is the fiscal year 2022 revenue update.
Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Listician. Again, good evening, Mayor and Council, members of the public. Tonight's revenue analysis comparison covers the 3 fiscal years that preceded the current fiscal year with 5 major revenue categories, which consist of local taxes, licenses and permits, administrative fees, fines and forfeitures, and lastly, community safety programs. So for the current fiscal year, revenue totals $6,208,595 for local taxes. In the previous fiscal year, that number had totaled $6,530,807. So we were up a little bit more in the previous fiscal year, but we are up more than the fiscal year before that, fiscal year 2020. That total was $6,102,505. And the year before that was even lower at $5,265,000. So currently, the town is in a favorable position when it comes to the local taxes. As far as projected revenue, we are in line with where we have projected to be as far as our budget versus actuals is considered. One thing I'd like to mention as well, for line item 4001, real estate taxes, again, we still are projected to have $281,590 flow back into the town from the TIF revenues. Again, we will find out as we near closer to the end of the fiscal year. We are in communication with MuniTap, and that projection is still there that they had given us in November. Personal property tax, if you look, is a bit lower than the previous fiscal year, and that was due to the purple line. We do anticipate having that again for the next fiscal year. So yeah, that explains where our local tax revenue is for the current fiscal year, and why it's a little bit lower than in the previous. Next, a major category, licenses and permits, consists of the rental licenses, building permits, business licenses, and parking permits. Currently, the town revenue sits at 196,749, which is also a bit lower than the previous fiscal year, which was 222,218. But again, higher than the year before, fiscal year 2020, which was 193,112. Next category is administrative fees, which includes municipal infractions. Currently, town revenue is at 5,300. Previous year, 1,400, and the year before that, 3,600. So the town is outperforming in its municipal infractions. The next category is fines and forfeitures, which is police reports, vehicle impounds, and parking citations. Currently, these numbers are a bit low, and as we mentioned in previous revenue analysis reports, we do attribute this to COVID-19. So as things do get better, we do expect these numbers to rise, particularly the parking citations, which have been trending down. This currently just at 4,050. In the previous fiscal year up until this point, parking citations were at 7,350. And then even the year before that, 16,225. Overall, yeah, the town is at 29,000 for this category. And we are starting to see a bit of a downtrend there. So we're continuing to monitor our fines and forfeitures. The last major category is community safety programs. Now, this is the category that has been outperforming in previous years. Currently, the community safety programs have a total of $1,157,550. In the previous year, at this point, the town revenue for this particular category was just at $752,000, and the year before that, $444,000. So this is another key revenue source that we continue to monitor. As the revenue increases, that also means that we have a lot of speeding cars. So again, the objective of the Safe Speed for Students is to minimize speeding and to make the town a safer place. So this is another category that we will continue to monitor. So overall, if we look at the operating income for the categories that we have displayed on the screen, the total is $7,597,000, which is outperforming the previous year of $7,543,000. And if we look at these major categories that we have here, we do have a trend moving in a favorable position for town revenues. So yeah, that concludes the revenue comparison, and I will open up to any questions.
Thank you, Deputy Director. Are there questions for Mr. Jones on this this report?
Mr. Mayor, not so much a question, but a comment.
Mm-hmm.
If parking citations are not meeting what's projected, I kind of take that as a good sign. Be it COVID or be it for whatever reason. I mean, ideally, we want folks who are not receiving citations. So if they're a little lower, I can still sleep at night. So
I think that's true as long as it's reflecting that there are fewer violations.
Yes,
definitely,
absolutely,
definitely agree.
Absolutely,
definitely agree. Okay, thank you, Deputy Director Jones. Let's move on the agenda. Next item. I've got my computer in some funny mode. There we are. Next item on the agenda is the Maryland Department of Agriculture Mosquito Control Program. Is there a staff update on this item?
Good evening, Mayor Thompson and members of the council. There's no specific update tonight, no additional information. Staff just seek direction from the mayor and council regarding the town's participation in the Maryland Department of Agriculture's mosquito control program. As you know, the deadline's coming up for us to say that we'll participate. That's actually May the 6th. So we're hoping to take action on this item one way or another on next Monday evening.
Thank you, Director Barnes. I actually need to reach out to Mr. Prendergast again and try to get the additional pieces of information on what mosquitoes they're collecting around town. He made some statements that made me think that it may be that we occasionally see other species of mosquitoes, that the regular ones of the Asian tigers are what we are most routinely bitten by, but that there are waves of them at other times. Another question that I came up with over the weekend was whether we might be able to set a higher threshold for when they do respond. They respond only when they see a certain number of mosquitoes and traps in the area. And so it may be that we could continue to participate, but raise that target number. I'm not sure if that's an option or not, but I will reach out to him during the next week and report back next week. Are there additional comments on this item?
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
a question. Do you want the staff team to reach out to Mr. Prendergast with whatever concerns you had?
I think, why don't you reach out, but please let me know when you are. So CC me on, if it's an email, please CC me, because I want to make sure I get the answer and that I get all the information that I need. So basically, the question is what mosquitoes they have collected historically, if they know what species they're collecting or if they're just counting, and also whether they can possibly raise the threshold for implementation of spraying in the area. Councilmember Lingua and I had a brief discussion about this last night also. Do you want to discuss that here, Councilman Lingua, or do you want to bring it up next week? Or
Well, I think this was a good time to bring it up.
Okay.
Being that by next week we need to decide one way or the other.
Yep.
And it's good. It's good to have a few days to think things over. But if we could, please, yes. Did you want me to start, or did you want to start?
Please do.
Okay. Well, for the other members of the council, I spoke with the mayor last night because the more I was thinking of this, the more I was thinking that it would probably be better to go ahead this year with this program, and at the same time reach out to town residents and find a way to along with what we're already planning, to augment that effort for mosquito traps and yards for the Asian tiger mosquito. Along with that, my thought was also to consider a program roughly akin to the lawn bag program we had, in the way of seeds for this is where my gardening throws me off, for planting. And if someone wants to chime in and help me out here, it's I'm sure Councilmember Foe knows this. The flowers that come up each year, daffodils and all those, are considered annuals.
Perennials?
Perennials. Thank you, sir. To make seed packets available, either at no cost or very reduced cost, to homeowners who would like to plant perennials in their yard, so as to essentially promote bee populations. And I know we are looking at doing gardens, but I'm thinking, why not also get participation with members of the community who would consider planting flowers as well to help with this effort. I think by having town participation, it's going to help raise awareness as to what challenges are before bee populations right now. Would also help in efforts that the town is making towards trying to preserve and promote bee populations. It's really, I consider it an effort that just is a bonus all around. In pretty much most ways that you look at it. Any thoughts on that?
If there are any council comments, I see that Ms. Katz has her hand up. Councilmember Foe. Please
I think
speak.
any idea. I think anything that we can do to promote pollinator gardens in this town is worth its weight in gold. So anytime you're talking about seeding plans, I mean, we've talked about doing this at a more individual level. Just my neighbor Chris Fike and I.
Okay.
But any town led initiative, I would be dramatically in support of. So I think it's a great idea, Councilman.
Thank you.
That's all.
Councilmember Smith, please speak.
Yep. Similarly, I would be definitely in favor of such a program, especially if we are making sure that the incentivized plants we're talking about are conducive to pollination. I don't know anything about that stuff. My wife knows a lot about it. I know some plants are better than others at attracting pollinators. And that's the extent of my knowledge. And then the other thing would be, I would add just encouraging that that also include native plants to our region. To
Yeah.
that growth as well.
Yeah.
But overall, yes, highly supportive of such a program.
Okay.
Seeing no other council hands up, Ms. Katz.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to also add, the council members were going in this direction already, but there are resources out there already, and native plants are key to being effective with such an idea like this, because the insects in this area are adapted to the plants that are already here, and actually sometimes they're very specialized towards the native plants. So just getting seeds and giving out seeds, etc., is probably I would take advantage of perhaps the Audubon Society, which is currently in Prince George's County offering free advice to homeowners who would like to increase their wildlife habitat in their yards, as an example. So I would encourage the town maybe to partner, maybe have some kind of outreach or educational things to go along with any plants that you potentially would want to offer to residents, or at low cost or lower cost. I'm sure bulk purchases would be a smart way to go about this on a grander scale.
Yeah.
But definitely bring in something like the Audubon Society as an example, to make sure that just planting any plant isn't always going to yield the result you seek.
Right. And I was on that thought and that consideration. If this is something that Sustainable Maryland Group would want to assist with in one way or another, be it with information or any other way, do let us know.
So that already exists in a sense because the towns all around us, we are trying to develop a pollinator corridor, and the sustainability group has already established. We've had 3 meetings about that already, and just brainstorming, obviously not just in Riverdale Park, but really across this region, how to increase the number of pollinator habitats, which Riverdale Park is supporting through its budget this year and even last year in establishing more pollinator gardens.
Okay.
And right now, we're kind of got off the subject of mosquitoes a little bit. And I had a question for the mayor, Mayor, you had said one of your questions for Mr. Pendergrast was about increasing the threshold of mosquitoes before spraying is done. And I just, what's the rationale behind that? Could you help me understand what you're thinking about with why that would be advantageous?
Sure. So the program as it exists, they do the nuisance spraying up to once a week, but they only do that when the threshold of a certain number of mosquitoes has been exceeded. And so we're trying to balance two issues here, and one of them is the comfort and happiness of the residents of the town and having fewer mosquitoes around. And the other is protecting the pollinators from probable, in my mind right now, but not proven harm from the spraying. So the state of Maryland believes that they are doing the spraying as safely as they can. There's disagreement on that. There's not good research on it. I tend to believe that there is some impact, at least some. And so we have to balance the needs of other people who have spoken to me privately, and some of whom have spoken in a public hearing here or there, who want to see the program continue. And so if they are collecting other than Asian tiger mosquitoes, we've established that the Asian tigers are not really impacted by the current spraying program. If they are collecting mosquitoes other than Asian tigers, then it may be that we could help protect the pollinators by saying, we're only going to do the nuisance spraying in the case of a really bad wave. If we have a big flood, if we have an enormous wave of these other species of mosquitoes that are out there and biting people, then we might be willing to go to having a nuisance spraying. But in general, we would like to stay away from them. So it's a step away from the current program, fewer sprayings, but still some sprayings. And of course, as has been covered previously, but just for anyone who's tuning in at this time, there are public health sprayings if they collect mosquitoes that are infected with West Nile virus or other mosquito-borne diseases that we cannot opt out of, and those will happen whether or not part of the program. Does that answer your question?
It does answer my question, and the part about other species of mosquitoes other than the Asian tiger, because spraying less frequently, if it's mostly the Asian tiger, is not going to have any more impact than spraying more frequently as far as dealing with that nuisance that we're trying to address. And I would suggest that maybe this is a multi-pronged approach, and maybe some other prongs would be even more effective than upping that threshold for nuisance spraying. Things like outreach and letting people know what they can actually do in their yards to reduce the mosquito population versus just waiting for it to get a little worse before the spraying. So I'm wondering where we should put our energy as far as if we want to address this holistically to have the most bang for the buck.
Right, and as with most things, then the answer is, given a choice, to take all of them, and so the choices of how to make mosquito control less impactful on the pollinator population is there. One of the things that Councilmember Lingua was suggesting was continuing with the current program as is or as modified, but trying to improve the pollinator habitat as a way of offsetting the impacts that the sprays might have. That was why this is being discussed under this topic.
I see.
And so that seems like is an interesting idea, different direction than I had thought of as being a possibility. And so several things are being pushed around or discussed as possible directions to go. And as I said, I do need some more technical information from the state about the population and what they're collecting and whether they even are willing to do this higher threshold. But if in fact all they're collecting is Asian tigers or 95% Asian tigers, then I would say we should withdraw from the state's nuisance program because it's not doing any good and it is fairly likely to be doing some harm. That would be my personal opinion. But if they are seeing other mosquitoes and the spraying does help control them, then we have to consider how to handle that information in our policy.
Ideally, right. So, right, I would, as a resident, I would hope that the result we seek is to not have nuisance mosquitoes and to preserve pollinators, to have both of those things. So, right, so a solution that is focused on that, I think, would be the one I would be looking for the most. And yeah, so I don't know. I'm looking forward to the data you're collecting. I appreciate the time and effort you put into this as well, and the number of people you've met with, Mayor in particular, to try to find out, you know.
I'm trying to figure out the best path forward to achieving as many goals as we can, and certainly something is going to get not we're going to come to something that's not perfect, but hopefully it'll be something that's better than where we are right now.
Well, maybe on the path in a direction that's actually on a path. Versus...
Right, and your point is very well taken. That it may be if there are residents who are unhappy about the mosquito population in their yard, mm-hmm. that having an education outreach of here's how you can control it, here are some resources that we can provide to help you control it would be a very good direction to go with that. So much appreciated.
Certainly. Yeah, mosquitoes are no fun.
No, I think we all agree that if all of the mosquitoes on the planet disappeared tomorrow, that I would not be too worried about the impact on that. I actually heard there's some environmental specialist who I heard years ago who someone asked her in this interview, what role do mosquitoes play in the in the ecosystem? What do they do, and what would be the impact if they all disappeared? And she danced around it for just a little while, and then she said, we really don't think they do anything. Which surprised me. Yeah, I was shocked at that. So but anyway, I would certainly not mind if we had 0 of the invasive exotic Asian tiger mosquitoes in our town, our country, and think that reducing the others to a lower level would be fine. So that's where I lean. Okay, are there additional public or council comments on this item? Okay, let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is acquisition of public art. Presume there's a staff report on this.
There is. Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council and members of the public. I'll provide some background to the Riverdale Park Art Initiative was established in 2015. It includes a partnership with the Hyattsville Community Development Corporation. This initiative offers the community a rotating year-round outdoor town-wide sculpture gallery to bring artwork to the town. So I believe there are 5 locations, one of which is Maple Munch Park, which is where the sculpture in question that we're talking about tonight is. In 2021, the Insect House by Elliot Hamilton was selected as one of the sculptures for this initiative. And like I said, it's currently at the Maple Munch Park site. Elliot describes his insect house as both practical and environmentally beneficial. And this insect house is designed to attract native insects such as mason bees, ladybugs, butterflies, and lacewings. We've reached out to the artist recently, and he has, with our intent to make the sculpture a more permanent fixture within town, he stated that the town could purchase the sculpture for $2,500. Town staff believe that we could relocate and have a little freestanding sign to a new site in town at a total cost of less than $5,000. Funds are currently available in the current operating budget, and I have included here a photo of the sculpture. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Director Shelton. Are there questions for Director Shelton on this proposed proposal?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Councilman Lingua.
So we're getting into the curating business.
To a small extent, small toe in the water here.
That's not a small toe, Mr. Mayor. That's a substantial piece. And if memory serves me well, no, pardon me, we aren't getting into the curating business because we already have gotten into the curating business. That being the removal of the large mural that used to sit at Route 1 and East-West Highway. That I believe was disassembled and I believe is stored somewhere up in the Department of Public Works in hopefully acceptable storage conditions for artwork.
That's the last I heard of it, Councilman.
So, I mean, as much as I like the idea, I was just wondering if, do we need to be looking at essentially a budget for storage, refurbishing, movement, location, just, a general now section of the budget dealing with that, and even with like the other pieces that we have in town, that we have, other works of art that we have in town that we have on display or had on display. I have no objection was getting, if we're going to get into this, but let's just make sure we're able to do this in a way that's well thought out and that we're funding it.
Okay.
Yes, there's a, sorry.
Please.
So go ahead. Go ahead.
There are funds available in the current operating budget for the purchase and relocation of this sculpture. And the plan is to locate the sculpture at the site of our first pollinator garden, which will be installed in the next few months.
Okay.
Before the next sculptures would arrive to this location.
Okay, so, and that part I understand, yes, there's money there now to do that. I'm just, my query is towards estimating on future funding for, for the case this piece needs to be removed because it needs to be repaired, or there needs to be some upkeep done on it. Anything of that, restoration work needs to be done on it. Things of that nature, no pun intended. Okay. So that's what my query is about. As I said, I think it's a great idea, but let's make sure we've got a piece that's, and we're ready to have a piece that's going to be around for a considerable amount of time.
Let's go to Councilmember Sadiq next.
I think you mentioned it. Is there a new sculpture going in there?
There will be, yes. Each year there are 5 new sculptures that replace the 5 sculptures that we have installed for the fiscal year. And so there will be a new sculpture installed, I believe, in the next 4 to 6 months. Yes.
Thank you.
Before I make my own comments, Ms. Katz, I see your hand is up. Would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I would just like to say, from my point of view, as a resident and member of the Sustainability Committee and Green Team, that the attraction of this piece, although it was brought into town because of the art, the public art initiative, which is fantastic. But the attraction is its functionality. It is a bee hotel where we were just talking about the topic we were just talking about with pollinators. This is the kind of thing we want to promote and educate people about. So it's not so much this piece of art. And to Councilmember Lingua's point, I mean, that's a good point. This may not last into perpetuity, but in this age right now, when the Sustainable Maryland program and all the towns around us are trying to establish a pollinator corridor, and this sucker is in our town, this can be a representative of the pollinator corridor and how our town feels about it for sure. So I think this idea of the staff of putting this with the pollinator garden, Sustainable Maryland is aware of this piece and they are big fans of it. This can be an outreach tool for pollinators, really, almost more than it is an art object. And I will say, I am not a good judge of what art costs and what people pay for art, so I really can't comment on that, but I know that I wouldn't be able to afford to buy it. I'm grateful that the town is interested in hanging on to this, basically, at least for the foreseeable future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Katz. So as Ms. Katz said, this was actually an idea that came out of the Sustainability Committee. And I had asked the town manager to look into this, and this is a proposal that is before. I don't remember the exact details of the sculpture that's at the corner of Baltimore Avenue and East-West Highway, but that sculpture is a permanent installation. I believe that it may technically be owned by the Hyattsville CDC, but the town has made a long-term commitment to the public arts program that we work with through them. And we could, in future budgets, add additional line items under that should we want to get into this business more so in the future. But as this is an opportunity that we have now, the artist lives within the state of Maryland, and so if we didn't do it during this fiscal year, we could conceivably do the purchase this sculpture or a similar one in future years. So the idea is here because there is money in this year's budget to do it, and should the council decide this is a good idea, we can do so.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Please.
Yeah, I see this less as, just as a purchase, as more as an acquisition, and acquisitions of such need to be kind of considered more as like investment. And with an outdoor piece like this, it's being that we have an agreement for the piece, the Joanna, oh gosh, I want to say Joanna Cassidy. I may not be getting her last name correct. Her piece there on the corner of Maryland 410 and Route 1. While we've made a commitment to that, we have a partner with Hyattsville CDC in the preservation of that piece of art. This is going to be a piece, an outdoor piece that we are taking on our own. And if this is going to require training for staff at DPW for outdoor art installation, preservation, maintenance, and upkeep, okay. A piece like this is what Ms. Cass was referring to in terms of what it represents. It represents an effort, it represents a commitment. And that's why it's going to be important in the years ahead that we have this piece, that we have this commitment to it being a functional living piece, so to speak, and that it's doing it's achieving its purpose. It's a very unique purpose. It's a very interesting piece. And I just feel, we as a community need to be prepared for that. So.
Okay.
Happy to acquire it. Just let's make sure that we're ready for that commitment, in the years ahead.
Okay, so you don't have any objection to this being on the agenda for next week as a possible council action? Okay.
No, but
you believe that we need to work, determine what resources will be required to maintain not just this, but also other items that may be acquired by future councils.
Right. Well, if we're doing this, we're kind, it's, gosh, I don't want to use the cliche about the Rubicon, but anyway, if we're getting into this, and this is, and the type of piece that it is, we're getting into curating, which is about restoration and preservation of works of art. And that's fine if we want to do this for whatever pieces the town collects and wants to display for the enjoyment of the entire community who are supporting this. Great. Let's just make sure that we are making that commitment to being good curators. That's all I'm saying. And it doesn't need to be figured out by next week. But if we're looking at doing this, it's with the understanding that in future years, we need to be able to essentially become more enlightened on curating art pieces, be them exterior pieces, interior pieces, 3-dimensional pieces, 2-dimensional pieces, whatever the sort.
Okay, I definitely understand your point, and
so I'll leave it at that.
Okay, I understand the point, and I believe that this piece is an interesting one, and that it will be outdoor, and I think it's not, as the sculpture we discussed earlier is made of cast metal, it's unlikely to need as much maintenance as this one is likely to. But I think we can figure that out. But as you said, we don't have to do that tonight or next week. So thank you for your perspective. Ms. Katz, do you still have your hand up for another comment?
I do. I just wanted to add in quickly here that would it be possible to reach out to the artist and ask him since he put it together, how he sees its longevity, how he sees what kind of maintenance it would need. Certainly before, if you were to make a purchase, I think reasonable question to ask him. Especially with what they're asking, how much it's costing. So, I mean, there's a source of information right there. Maybe he can say exactly what needs to be done with it and how long he would think it would last over time.
Okay, thank you. Good point. Okay, so this will be on next week's agenda for a possible action by the town council. So unless there's further discussion, and I don't see any other hands or even unmuted mics, let's move on to work session discussion item 4, county legislation CB-14-2022 regarding disposable food serviceware.
Good evening, Mayor Thompson and members of the council. This item is on the agenda because this is something that our neighbors have done, supported. County legislation CB 14-2022 would require that by February 1st, 2023, food service businesses provide accessory disposable food serviceware only upon request by the customer or at a self-service station. And takeout or delivery orders would not include accessory disposable food serviceware unless specifically requested by the customer in person, on phone, or online. So this is an effort to minimize that waste that we often get if you're getting carry out, the extra forks and napkins and spoons and straws and things of that nature. On March 22nd, 2022, the city of Hyattsville sent a letter of support for this piece of legislation, and the Riverdale Park Sustainability Committee has requested that the town consider sending a similar letter of support. this legislation is consistent with the town's vision and commitment statement regarding sustainability.
Thank you, Director Barnes. Are there questions or comments? Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, I'm supportive of this. It strikes me that this proposal makes it an upon request item, unlike I know the district bans things like plastic straws, which is well intentioned, and I appreciate the sentiment behind it. But some of my friends in the disability rights movement have publicly raised that that's actually a big issue for folks who rely on plastic straws for drinking and other whatever they may, however they consume nourishment, shall we say. So I appreciate that this piece of legislation seems to take that into account, and that we're not outright taking those things off the shelves. That's my comment.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Additional council comments?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Councilman Lingua, please speak.
The penalty section is really steep.
Yes, it is, Councilman. And I listened to the hearing that took place a couple of weeks ago, and it sounds to me that Councilmember Glaros will be working to resolve that section of legislation. Other county council members also raised that concern, and it sounds to me like they're going to be working together to actually come to a little bit more of a take a different approach, I think, to this.
Okay.
Yeah, so I know that this came up during the hearing, and it's definitely something that's raised some alarms. But my understanding is that Councilmember Glaros and the other sponsors are going to come back together and revisit that specific section.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to send a letter of support, it's we're in for a penny, we're in for a pound, but we're not in for $250 and $1,000.
Correct.
So Councilmember Lingua, would you suggest that we write a letter of support, but asking for significant reductions in the second and third and further violation fines?
Yeah, conditioned on the fact that there is a wholehearted review and revision of the enforcement clause of the bill.
Okay.
Which is not as onerous on a business as is being presented, as to what we're seeing that is being presented before us right now to consider.
Okay. Any additional council comments? I will note, by the way, for the record, that Councilmember Mayers showed up, I think, about half an hour, 45 minutes ago. I didn't mention that when she first arrived. Are there any public comments on this this proposed letter of support with conditions? Okay, I'll mention that it's been a frustration for me in my private life, trying to get certain businesses to not give me plastic forks and knives and with my orders, to the point of putting as a special instruction on each item on my online orders: please no forks, please no knives, please no plasticware. And yet it still seems to show up. So that's just me, but it's a difficult thing to act on this individually, and I think that having a county level action and saying that we're not interested in this is probably a good idea. Or we're interested in seeing less plasticware served with foods. Does staff know? I have a memory that there are other jurisdictions that have implemented a similar policy and that the restaurants have been able to adapt fairly easily. Does staff have information on that?
I'm trying to recall, Mayor Thompson, in the hearing, I seem to remember 2 counties that were mentioned, one of which is Howard County, and I know because I live in Howard County, so I'm familiar with this. But I want to say Montgomery County, but I'm not certain. I'd have to go back and listen again to the hearing, but that was part of the discussion also, was that this can be done in a way that is not so burdensome on the businesses.
Okay. Okay, that was my memory, but I didn't have memory of the details. So thank you for bringing up that this is true in Howard County. I knew it was somewhere nearby. I just couldn't remember exactly where it was. Okay, is there additional discussion on this item, or should we move forward on the agenda?
I have no more comments.
Okay. Hearing none, let's move on to discussion item 5, amendments to the permit parking program.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll begin the conversation. So there's been over the years some accolades and some complaints and some concerns raised about permit parking. And as detailed in the memo, the ordinance was last updated, or the code section, I'm sorry, was last updated in 2018, along with a resolution specifying what permit parking areas we have. I've listed in the memorandum the elements of the program and the fact that we have approximately 200 valid permits in use at any given time. And it's really important, I think, for everyone to know that there's been discussion from the Riverdale Park Station HOA about the desire to participate in a permit parking program when the streets and infrastructure are transferred to the town. And Director Lewis and I are in discussions with the developer to make that happen later this summer. And when we look at different parking areas, different neighborhoods, I should say, whether it's Madison Hill or Riverdale Park Station or some of the town's older neighborhoods, there's unique characteristics, whether it's road width or apron cuts, how many available parking spots there may be, density of the homes. And looking at the current program, it's staff's view that it would be good to begin several discussions with the mayor and council, that culminating in a rewrite of this particular section of Chapter 64. And the current way the program evolves is by resolutions. So we have a series of resolutions over years that have modified the program in different ways. And so the gist of it is that staff think it's time for a more comprehensive look at the program, and then to undertake the discussions and receive the input from these areas, and there may be other areas that would like to have a permit parking program. And under next steps, as you can see in the packet material, staff are recommending some guiding principles. And that is that residents will be consulted, permits will be available to all residents within a designated area, that issued permits would only be valid in a designated area based on the application address, that the number of permits per dwelling will vary by area based on neighborhood characteristics, and the processes will be user-friendly. We'll go paperless and support sustainability as much as we can, at least go paperless. That there's no individually reserved spaces, and that visitor permits at some number would be authorized. So even with these guiding principles, there's a lot of meat that has to be fleshed out, and I think lots of discussions. There's differing opinions among residents within the same areas. I've heard from some residents saying we should only have one permit available to everyone in the neighborhood, and others saying, no, we should have 5. And so there's lots of diverse opinion on this. And so in preparation for handling the acceptance of infrastructure in Riverdale Park Station, and knowing that request is coming, for addressing concerns in Ward 4, in particular in the Madison Hill area, we've had concerns raised. Staff just think it's a good time to have a comprehensive discussion about the permit parking program. And if the mayor and council direct it, we'll prepare different segments of the discussion over the next several work sessions, kind of come up with an order of things for how we can get to a revised program. Chapter 64 is written now, says that if you change the program, you should have a public hearing, and that's why a public hearing is mentioned in here as well. So with that, I'll take any questions, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. I see 2 hands up, so I'll start with Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, just one other thing to flag is I'm noticing that the 2018 ordinance requires a hangar style permit just for, I mean, is there a reason why that was limited to hangar style? I'm wondering if just adding some language that would provide more flexibility there. I know I already have like 3 hangar permits on my truck for different places I have to park. You know, I know other places do decals, but I think, you know, locking into any, like just giving flexibility in that language of what kind of designation works for this program would be helpful, I think.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Sadiq.
Down the next page with some of the ideas moving forward, parking passes will be available to all residents. I think currently we limit it to homeowners who can then give it to rental residents, as opposed to rental residents getting it their own permit. What was the intent?
I'll have to check that, sir. I'm not sure that is the case. My apologies.
Thank you.
Ms. Barnes, are you aware of what the answer may be to that?
I'm not certain. I'm thinking back to when we had parking permits at Town Hall, and we did handle that situation quite a bit, but I'm not certain how it's handled now.
Councilmember Smith, your hand is back up. Is that correct?
Yeah, just in relation to the concern that Councilmember Sadik raised. I know in other places I've lived that had permit parking like this, there's some issue with exploitation on behalf of the landlords who will rent out a space that they own, and rather than allowing that or handing over the parking permit to their tenant, they like list it on Craigslist or something like that to, you know, so they're getting the money for the space. Like as a tenant, you're essentially paying the money for that space if the space goes, or not the space, but the permit goes to the homeowner, and then they're turning around and also selling the permit otherwise. So that's just one thing that I would caution on that issue.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. I can remember living in a heavy permit zone many years ago, and it was not my favorite situation, but I also understand the need to regulate people parking on the streets. So have to find the right balance as usual. Any additional council or public comments this evening on this item? Okay, it sounds to me like it's a reasonable process. It's a long process, longish process, and staff has received feedback from the council about some concerns they have. So let's continue moving forward and continue discussing it and involve the residents of the town as well in this discussion. So great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The
next item on the agenda is item 6, International Property Maintenance Code.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council, members of the public. Currently, the town has adopted the Prince George's County Housing and Property Standards Code by reference, and most recently within the past year, actually, the code, the Prince George's County updated their code to include the 2018 International Property Maintenance Code. The county restricts this property standards code to only housing and property standards code to only apply to residential properties. And so therefore, when the town has adopted it by reference, that's how we have adopted it as well. The town has been studying and the staff has been studying and reviewing the 2018 International Property Maintenance Code. And additionally, we've spoken to the mayor and council at a number of meetings about local amendments to be made. Should we adopt our own Riverdale Park Property Maintenance Code? And most recently, there's been a lot of communication with the town attorney, and we've come up with a draft Riverdale Park Property Maintenance Code, which is based on the 2018 International Property Maintenance Code, which includes our local amendments as discussed, as well as some housekeeping amendments that go with adopting the property maintenance code. In order to adopt the Riverdale Park Property Maintenance Code, the town attorney drafted an ordinance, specifically 2022 OR 04, which would repeal chapters 67 housing standards and 68 weeds, rubbish, and garbage maintenance from the existing town code. The idea is that these items are also included in the 2018 or now our Riverdale Park Property Maintenance Code draft, and we do now want to repeat code in different areas within the town code, lest we change something in one place and neglect to do so in another. So the proposed Riverdale Park Property Maintenance Code is attached, as well as the ordinance. If there are any questions on either, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Director Chilton. Are there questions for Director Chilton on this item? Councilmember Smith, your hand is up. Please speak.
That's residual from the last discussion. I'll lower it.
Okay, very good. So, Director Shelton, the one of the chapters being replaced, chapter 68, weeds, rubbish, and garbage maintenance, had a lot of council input many years ago. There was a lot of discussion about exactly how tall grass would allowed to be and how it would be cut and various other issues such as that. And I was curious as to whether you think that anything crucial has been lost from our current chapter 68 moving to the International Property Maintenance Code, and whether we need to carefully scrutinize the two to make sure that everything is captured.
The town manager and I actually spoke about this at length last week when I was drafting this cover memo. We were going back and forth over the drafted code, and he mentioned to me that the last changes to chapter 68 were indeed in 2018, and the key parts that we needed to include in the draft Riverdale Park Property Maintenance Code, and those have been included in this draft as well. Items
okay.
Like, yes, like you mentioned.
Very good. I very much appreciate knowing that. So thank you.
And
go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to add that we then had Mr. Sussman review 68 and the proposed property maintenance code to make sure we weren't losing any authority, that there weren't any conflicts and things of that nature.
Very good. Very much appreciate the level of attention from staff and the town attorney on that particular issue, because chapter 68 has been controversial many times during my time on the council, so, and before. So appreciate the careful attention there. Are there additional council or public comments on this item?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Please.
Mr. Charlton, how substantially different is this property maintenance code from what we have on hand in your view?
So currently we have adopted the Prince George's County Housing and Property Standards Code, which is the 2018 International Property Maintenance Code with some minor amendments. And again, like I said, it only applies to residential properties. So
Right.
it's very similar in its skeleton. It's very similar indeed. So it wouldn't require a large change in residents' understanding of what would be allowed and not allowed. There's just some minor differences that are included because of local amendments, like the ones we discussed before at meetings when talking about the International Property Maintenance Code.
Okay, but this is also taking on commercial properties as well.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, which is something that's really hasn't been our purview before.
That's right, yes.
Okay. So that's going to be a new substantial undertaking, correct?
That will take some adjustment, yes.
It's an interesting way to phrase it, Mr. Shelton. My concern, having gone through the experience of when we revised the permitting process in town a number of years ago, and I know the mayor remembers this well, we put forward something that was quite substantively different in terms of changes. And what happened is that in effect we had businesses in town become de facto third parties, because what our code did was, and what it was asking for, was putting a responsibility not so much on the businesses, but on the county to be able to provide records, which at times they were not able to do. And thus it was holding up the permitting process and the renewal of a business's license for the coming year. Essentially, and I think a lot of that is from the time that we had it passed and when it went into being enacted, was a very brief time frame, which, looking back, probably did not give parties enough time to be cognizant and to be aware and to be able to prepare for when the new regulations went into effect. And that's my concern here with this. Upon passage of this, do we want to set this on a given timetable so that both businesses as well as town staff have time to prepare for when it does go into effect?
We can certainly have a public information campaign when we partner with the Office of Administrative Services to make sure all parties are aware of the change. We've already made several notices, but we can continue to do so and perhaps even provide it in stages like we've suggested.
Yeah, it's great that you've provided notices. I think my question is, is the provision of such notices that you've made, are they being acknowledged by the recipients as having received them and understanding them?
If I may add add something. I have a little experience in building new code programs and both in other jurisdictions. But I think that Director Shelton's point of having a directed education program is necessary. And I think the staff are going to educate themselves and do an assessment of what do we actually have. Now, the vast majority of the issues in the property maintenance code as it applies to commercial properties are going to be things that, in my view, most property owners probably already have a sense that their building may need painted, or their windows may be broken, or the roof may be collapsed, or their downspouting may be falling off their buildings, things of that nature. And so this is all about property maintenance, and our approach is to have constructive dialogue, constructive conversations towards voluntary compliance. So I would allay any fears that that property owners will not be given an opportunity to come into compliance and not be educated on what the requirements are. Referring back to the budget book for, and Ryan helped me out here, but as one of the goals, I think, was to have some sort of a guide created for property owners, businesses included, to know what's required and to comply with the requirements of the code. So I do think that educational component and telling a property owner, as the code requires, you point out what the deficiencies are, and then you give them a period of time to come into compliance. And I will say that the staff that we've employed in neighborhood services have been very reasonable in their approaches to businesses and to our residents and other property owners on a variety of code matters. Actually, to the point of sometimes we receive complaints that we're not being stern enough, that we're not pushing hard enough, that we're not issuing fines. And we've heard those complaints too. So I agree with you, Councilmember Lingua. This is going to be quite the undertaking. And as I mentioned the other day at the public hearing, you may hear from us next year that the volume of work is such that we may need additional staff. I hope that in some degree addresses your concerns, sir.
Well, sir, if I hear from you within 6 months of the start of the fiscal year, I won't be surprised.
If I might build on top of the town manager's discussion, one thing that I think has happened in the past with neighborhood improvement staff and issues with building maintenance is that they have gone to the property owners and asked, addressed that there is an issue, brought it up in discussion and asked if it could be remediated by the owners. And usually we get good compliance from that. Usually the owners are agreeable with that and move forward. But there have been times where that has not happened. And at times residents have reached out to me to say, just as an example, why is this person's roof had a tarp over the hole in it for the last 2.5 years? And the answer that I have to give them is we don't have any legal authority to do anything about that. And so that's part of what I'm hoping to address with this, is that in the cases where we can't get voluntary compliance, that we do have some teeth that we can get compliance. Councilmember Smith, I saw your hand go up briefly, but now it's back down. Did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, for example, in the situation that you just mentioned, like, where the case is that the resident doesn't have the means to conduct the maintenance, fix whatever the problem might be, does the town have any programs to assist with that?
Director Joe?
We do have programs able to assist. So for example, if somebody has a dilapidated fence, we have an accessory structure grant program that is quite well applied to. and somebody could use matching grant funds to repair their fence. I think it's up to $1,000 for the accessory structure grant. So we do have programs that would help people if they are lacking in means to make the appropriate adjustments.
Thanks, Mr. Sheldon. I asked because I'm a person who came from modest means to overestimate it. I remember as a kid, we moved into a house when we were in one financial situation, and within a few years, our family was in a different one. And the lawnmower that we had bought to take care of the big yard was broken, and my parents didn't have the money to pay someone to mow the yard. And I remember folks on the school bus making fun of me for it, and asking friends to drop me off around the corner so they didn't see the yard and whatnot, which isn't to like tell my sob story here, but just that as with the issue of voluntary compliance, a lot of people, as the mayor mentioned, they're aware of the issues that exist and they would like to fix them. And I just hope we're not moving to a place that there's legal repercussions without some sort of safety net in place to ensure that if we're requiring something and people legitimately don't have the means to do it, that we have some aid programs in place to support that.
So just to clarify, Councilmember Smith, the main new authority that we have under this law is actually for commercial properties. We already have most of these authorities for residential properties. And so
Sure. It still strikes the chord with me though, and especially in this time when our businesses are struggling through the pandemic and whatnot. I think the same principle applies.
Certainly, and I agree that that we always want to provide as much help in complying with the law to our residents as we can, and to help out those that are having issues and difficulties.
Mr. Mayor, if I'm not mistaken, I believe the county has a program as well.
I believe the county has several different programs, and we would have to see exactly what the patchwork is for that, but I'm pretty sure you're correct.
Mm-hmm. That is correct, and we do notify residents who are in a similar position that those programs exist.
Okay, so what is going to happen next week, Mr. Chilton? Do we need to make a particular decision?
I think we'll be seeking introduction next week, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. So that's what's going to be on the agenda, unless I hear from the council that you think more time is needed. Okay, so we'll see it on the agenda.
Which you are you referring to, Mr. Mayor?
Excuse me?
Which you are you referring to?
If any members of the council are concerned about it being on the agenda next week.
Oh, okay.
For introduction.
Okay.
Are there any public comments on this item or additional council comments? Okay, let's move on to the next item on the agenda, item 7, the date of the June work session.
Good evening, Mayor Thompson and members of the council. Back in June, on June 21st, 2021, the mayor and council adopted Resolution 2021 R11, establishing a meeting schedule, defining a regular meeting, and establishing a definition of attendance for meetings of the council. But after further review of the council's meeting schedule, staff have found that there's a conflict with the date of the June 2022 and June 2023 work sessions. Currently, the meetings are scheduled for June 20th, 2022 and June 19th, 2023, which are the dates when Juneteenth will be observed by the town. So the June legislative meetings are actually scheduled for June the 6th and June the 5th, respectively, of those years. Just to give you a frame of reference, staff recommend 3 options with regard to the meeting dates for the June work sessions. So move the meeting dates to the week prior. So that would be Monday, June 13th, 2022 and Monday, June 12th, 2023. Or move the dates to the Tuesday, which would be June 21st or June 20th. Or move the meeting dates to the last week in June if a quorum of the council will not be attending the MML Summer Conference. So that would be Monday, June 27th or Monday, June the 26th. So as we've discussed for many years, June is a difficult month for us. We have a lot of things happening at one time. And I think when we went to prepare the schedule for those years, we were keeping in mind the MML convention and trying to keep some space between the legislative meeting and the work session. But unfortunately, that's not possible. So we found ourselves in this situation. We have 3 options available to us, and staff are seeking direction from the mayor and council regarding how they'd like to proceed with the dates for the June work sessions.
Thank you, Director Barnes. Council members, what thoughts do you have? Councilmember Lingua.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. My thought is to just go for the week prior, June 13th and June 12th. I know that's coming right after a week of legislative session, but I just think better to just go ahead and have it then and move on.
Okay. Are there any other Councilmember Sadiq?
As I mentioned, I'll be in Spain in June. And if it's on the 27th of June, 2022, I can make that via VTC.
But not the other dates?
Not the other dates.
Okay. Any other thoughts from council members? Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, I just defer to consensus of the council on this, and anything that doesn't interfere with Councilmember Sadiq being in Spain.
Oh, I'm going to be in Spain. There's no doubt.
Yeah, he's gonna be there the whole month. So, what, you want us to have it in May?
I defer to the consensus of the council.
Any additional council members who wish to weigh in?
You could do it like College Park, have our work session right before the legislative session that we had the work session for. Oh,
that sounds like that would be quite an evening. No question of that.
Is the current suggested date for this year June 6th for the
No.
legislative? No.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
and that will be 2 weeks after the work session because of Memorial Day in between, I believe.
Okay, 6 works for me.
Well, the 6th does not work. Does the 13th work for you?
He's in Spain.
Yeah, I wish.
He's gonna be in Spain.
Without
Well,
looking at a calendar right now, I believe the 13th works for me. I do have an end of year camping trip scheduled, and I will be in Cabins, West Virginia.
On which date?
I don't believe it's until the 15th, but I'm not 100% certain, and I'd like to check on that.
Okay.
Okay,
Can you
if
check your
everyone
email?
can scrub their calendars and bring some ideas for next week, and please reach out to staff or myself in the intervening days, and let's see if we can come to a consensus on this. I'm not sure of exactly which direction to go at this time. I'm hearing a lot of different opinions.
Okay.
So if everyone could let me know for each of these options, just rank them in order of works best for me to works worst for me, and then I will try to extract a consensus from that. Do rank order voting on this. Okay, unless there is additional discussion, then let's move on to the next item. Item 8, Ordinance 2022-OR-02 regarding financial disclosure.
Good evening again, Mayor Thompson and members of the council. No action is requested tonight at the April 25th work session. This ordinance has been discussed for several months. It's regarding financial disclosure and providing some flexibility for the Ethics Commission. This has been drafted by Town Attorney Fred Sussman, reviewed by the Ethics Commission, and then subsequently introduced at the beginning of April. So this is just another opportunity for the council or the public to provide feedback or comments on the piece of legislation. Staff will be seeking introduction at the May 2nd legislative meeting.
Thank you, Director Barnes. Are there questions or comments on this item? Okay, I thought it was some straightforward and needed updates to the ordinance, so I think that's all good. Are there any public comments on this? Seeing no indication, let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is appointments to various committees. And I will let staff start the discussion, and I will pick up at that point.
Great. Again, good evening, Mayor and Council. I think I'll be on the agenda for the next couple of items, so maybe I don't need to say that each and every time, but thank you again for the opportunity to talk about this topic. Appointments to the boards and committees. Staff are seeking assistance and guidance from the Mayor and Council regarding appointments to the Redistricting Committee, the Town Common Seal Design Committee, and the Board of Elections. The Redistricting Committee was established by Resolution 2022 R02 on February 7th and is comprised of the mayor and 3 members of the community. We've received 1 expression of interest from a member of the community that's interested in serving on that committee. The Town Common Seal Design Committee was established by Resolution 2022 R03 on March the 7th and is comprised of 2 members of the council and 3 town residents. Just today, we received 2 other expressions of interest for a total of 3 residents who've expressed interest in serving on the committee. We still need 2 members of the council who are interested in serving on that committee. The last item is the Board of Elections, and as you'll recall, it was established by Charter Amendment Resolution 2022 CR01 and just became effective on April 19th, 2022. The board is comprised of the chief and deputy chief election judges, as well as 3 registered voters, at least 18 years of age, and 1 registered voter under the age of 18 years old. Staff have reached out to the election judges and the alternate election judges from the 2021 town election to determine if they're interested in serving on the Board of Elections. So currently, we only have the chief and the deputy chief election judges in place for that board. The town staff have conducted community outreach through the town's social media platforms, the town crier, and the town's website. Again, we've received 1 expression of interest for the redistricting committee and 3 for the town seal design committee. Additional outreach efforts are scheduled for like the May edition of the town crier and other town communication platforms.
Thank you, Director Barnes. Under the redistricting committee, I have received through a council member another expression of interest from a resident, and so that brings me up to 2. I reached out to a resident and asked them if they were interested, and a third resident, and that person was unfortunately not interested. I have a few more ideas. I'm going to try to reach out to them over the next couple of days. I will be wanting to have brief conversations with the 3 people who reached out on the seal design committee, and I'm very interested to see the response on the Board of Elections. So thank you for those updates. I may have be ready with the town common seal design committee next week, and with a little bit of luck, the redistricting. I don't expect the Board of Elections to be ready by next week. So wish me luck.
Certainly.
Are there council questions? Councilmember Smith.
Just I've had conversations with a couple folks interested in a couple of these committees, and I just want to make sure. I'm not sure if the folks you guys are talking about expressing interest are the same folks. I know Mr. Baker from One Wood had expressed interest in the seal design committee, and then Miss Kelly from Ward 1 on the redistricting committee.
I did not have Ms. Kelly on my list, so thank you. I will reach out to her. This is Kate Kelly.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't receive that. Okay, so I will.
We had a conversation, and she said she was going to reach out to you. So I just thought that.
Well,
happened.
it's possible that I lost that email. It does happen on occasion. I try not to, but it does happen.
And then
Okay,
Mr. Baker, because I had approached him about it, and he mentioned that he would be very excited and had recently purchased a book on heraldry design. So, and him being a town resident and educated at the Yale School of Art, I think he would be a great addition to that committee.
Okay, I need to review the list of candidates. I don't honestly remember who's on that list right now, but I'll look at it and reach out to him about that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any additional council or public comments on this item? Okay, let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is agenda item 10, rebranding of community walks to the TRP Walk and Talk.
So I'm very excited to talk about this topic because I'm a huge fan of community walks, as I know everyone here is as well. So staff have been discussing a new concept with the community walk. So just building on the concept that we've had in the past. As you know, it's been held, community walks have been held for a number of years. There have been a variety of formats, and we've had mixed success with getting folks involved. Our community walks are an opportunity to hear from our residents, our business owners and visitors, and more of an informal setting about topics that are important to them. So we're meeting our residents where they are. We get to view conditions in the neighborhoods in town, and we also conduct micro cleanups along the way. We'd like to continue with all of those things, but really just rebrand these events as TRP Walk and Talks. So these will be a little bit different in that there will be somewhat of an agenda for each of the walk and talks. So a good example would be what we were just talking about earlier today with regard to parking. So perhaps we have a community walk that deals with parking, and we actually walk to the areas where there are specific concerns. Or if there's a town project, I think we also talked about the pollinator gardens, that might be a perfect opportunity for us to come together and walk to the pollinator garden to talk about some of our sustainability efforts. So we have a schedule, a proposed schedule in mind. Here at the bottom, there are several dates throughout the rest of the year. And of course, if it's nice and warm in November, we can still walk in November. It's the same time, a Saturday morning at 9:30. I'd like to try to keep the meeting places pretty similar. So we're going to be working on the schedules and the topics in the coming weeks. And I would like to share, if Ryan, if you wouldn't mind, if I could share my screen just one quick moment. We do have a really neat flyer that staff put together, and I wanted to just show that really briefly. So this is our rebranded walk and talk flyer. Now things may change, so I didn't want to put it quite out to the public yet. But these are just some of the ways that we try to increase interest in something that maybe we've done before. So we have our little QR code, we have the schedule. And again, we'll be promoting this through the town crier, through social media, in all of the regular ways. And our regular process includes actually going along the walk route and actually putting door hangers on the residents' doors, letting them know that we're coming, giving folks the opportunity to come out and meet us. This is a COVID safe activity. So we'll still be masked, but I think this is the safest way to kind of get out there into the community and kind of focus on topics that are important to us and promote some of the really great things that are happening in town. We would love to hear any feedback or any thoughts you have about restarting these TRP walk and talks.
Thank you, Director Barnes. Are there council questions or comments on this item?
Mr. Barnes, do you know if that dinosaur in the QR code is a species native to the Riverdale Park area?
I am not certain. Thank you for pointing that out, though. I saw that myself, and I was pretty thrilled that staff worked that in there. So try to keep it fun.
It looks great.
Thank you.
Councilmember Foe.
Director Barnes, your excitement for getting back in front of the public is, I feel it, and it's palpable and it's exciting, and I'm glad that we are doing this again. And I can't wait to be out there with you.
Great.
So thank you.
That's good.
Thank you, Councilmember Foe. I'm just speaking for myself. I'm also looking forward to getting out there again. The date of the first one on May 14th. If the trip continues as planned, I will be arriving back from Italy the afternoon before, and so my schedule may be a little bit messed up, but I think I can probably make it work since 9:30 in the morning here is 3:30 in the afternoon in Italy. So maybe I'll just stick with the Italian schedule for a little while and be wide awake at 6 o'clock in the morning that day. So so thank you for working on this. I'm very pleased to hear that you're considering COVID safety. I think we've learned a lot since the first few years about how COVID is transmitted, and I think these walks can be conducted safely. So appreciate that you're keeping that in mind. Any additional council or public comments on this item? Okay, that brings us to the end of our discussion items for this evening. Well, there's minutes. As always, please review the minutes and provide feedback to staff on any issues that you find in there. And with that, let's move on to new business. Are there any items of new business?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes, please.
This is an item of that I feel is new business, though it's something that the town's been involved with for a number of years. And hopefully Mr. Charlton can help me out here as to where exactly the process is for this year for the Riverdale Park Arts Initiative. I know they had the deadline for submission of items. I know since that deadline, and then I have not had or received any emails from the Hyattsville CDC in terms of evaluation of the submissions. have you heard anything from the Hyattsville CDC in that regards?
I actually have. I received an email from a Jessica Perez from the Hyattsville CDC on Wednesday, the 20th, last week,
Okay.
where they are, yes, where the votes from the public art jury are submitted before May 1st by 5
Oh,
p.m.
that's interesting.
So
So
very
they've already selected a jury.
It does appear so, yes.
Councilmember Lingua, I will mention that when I was cycled off of the jury, I also wasn't informed that I wasn't on the jury anymore. So
Oh,
it's not.
okay.
So
Well,
maybe we
I was
should.
hoping we were going to get some schedule as to what the jury process would be, because you know, based on the past couple of years, I thought it would be good for members from the Riverdale Park community to be part of that selection process. And I had identified one person who said that they would be happy to serve on the committee. And I was waiting to hear from the committee, or at least hear from the RPI, you know, from CDC, as to what the process was going to be and what the deadlines were.
We can reach out, sir, and find out how they've comprised their jury and whether or not there's any wiggle room there.
Okay, that would be great.
Director Shelton, can you do that tomorrow?
I can certainly do that, yes.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. It's my feeling that I think it would be good for the town as a body to be able to identify folks to sit on this committee who are residents of the community to serve on this jury, as it is a portion of the monies towards this initiative is coming from the taxes levied. And I think it would also give us an opportunity to essentially incorporate more our vision and commitment statement on inclusion and diversity as well, with the appointments to this jury. So whatever information staff can find out about that, and if there's an opportunity that we can ask. I know I have one resident. I'm looking to reach out to another, and hopefully they would agree to this as, you know, to serve as well, even on short notice. I think that would be a good way to go forward on this.
So, Councilmember, I'm not. I'm a little bit processing the news this evening, just as you are, I believe. But it sounds to me like the process has perhaps largely gone forward already for this year, because it's just a week to May 1st, and so I would think that they are wrapping up their recommendations at this time, and not that they're just starting the process. But I think we could certainly look into amending this for future years if it's not possible for this year.
Well, I know there have been timelines that have gone over that, and usually what happens is there's an initial selection, and then it gets winnowed down to a number of others, which then need to get winnowed down again, and this really sometimes doesn't even get figured all out until the middle of May.
Okay, well, why don't we check into the current status of the
Sure.
process, and also as to what the agreement that we have with the Hyattsville CDC is, to see who is supposed to provide recommendations on the design committee, if that's in the agreement.
Okay.
Are there other items of new business? Are there any items of unfinished business? Okay, this is an informal meeting. We've gotten to the end. And so let's all enjoy the rest of our evening. Thank you all for a fantastic and interesting meeting. Lots of good discussion this evening. Appreciated it.
Thank you, everyone.
See you all next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.